Let's follow Agent Lois Lane in her investigation to find the stranger from a strange land who has a strange S on his chest. Her travels reveal more about the world Kal-El now calls home. But is it really worth the read? Let's find out in our review of Absolute Superman number 4 from DC Comics. See you in 3. Welcome back to Comical Opinions. This is our review of Absolute Superman number 4. Before we dig in, how about a quick recap? When we last left tween Kal-El in Absolute Superman number 3, the El family became aware that the Ministry of Science knew all along that Krypton was dying, and they had a plan in place to save just the elite members of society. Jor-El's attempts to warn the public landed him in prison, so Kal and his mother broke him out with the help of advanced weapons and technology. The issue ended with Kal-El's parents unveiling a large ship they built to save themselves and as many people as possible. The epilogue, which came at the very end, showed a woman in a hospital room on Earth with some unclear connection to the abandoned Kent farm. What's that all about? I have no idea, and this issue does nothing to fill in the blanks. Speaking of this issue, let's get into it. Absolute Superman number 4 begins with Agent Lois Lane of Lazarus Corporation beating and arresting Peacekeeper Crenshaw for firing on innocent civilians at the end of issue number 2. So there's a little bit of a gap there between what happened then and now. We learn Agent Lane has spent several months questioning civilians near spots around the globe where this so-called Superman has stopped briefly to lend a hand. Her research so far has come up pretty empty since nobody is willing to talk or give the Lazarus Corporation any insight into where Superman is or what he's doing. Later, Agent Lane receives a call from her retired father warning her to take out Superman if she should find him and to beware of the terrorist group known as the Omega Men. It's clear Lois has a contentious relationship with her father, and in turn, Mr. Lane harbors a deep resentment over losing his legs during a battle with the Omega Men. So her father is still the hard-nosed, military type of person we would know from the mainline or Prime Earth, but in this case, their roles are a little bit reversed from a military service perspective. Elsewhere, Agent Crenshaw appears to be taking his humiliation at the hands of Superman poorly. During a mandatory therapy session with Lazarus Corp's Brainiac AI, the computer gaslights Crenshaw into believing that he didn't actually harm anyone and that his spiraling mental state is only temporary. So he's fit for service and he's getting ready to go back out there. But it's very clear that he's losing his grip and he's entering into some sort of self-destructive spiral. During another solo search patrol on the streets of Brazil, Agent Lane walks down an isolated alley and is confronted by a junior member of the masked Omega Men, a gentleman by the name of Jimmy, who we can surmise is Jimmy Olsen. Jimmy tries to convince Lois that the Omega Men aren't terrorists and that they're trying to free people from the oppressive Lazarus Corp's propaganda and lies. After a brief fight, Lois gets the better of Jimmy, and that's not a surprise, but suddenly, an armored senior member of Omega Men joins the fight, a character by the name of Omega Prime, also called Primus. Primus and Agent Lane are evenly matched during their fight. Superman suddenly flies in and stops the fight. Primus attempts to convince Superman to join the Omega Men because she thinks they're sort of on the same team, or at least they have a common enemy in the Lazarus Corporation. But he knocks her away as soon as she gets a little too aggressive. Agent Lane pleads with Superman for a talk, but before they can continue, a squad of peacemakers arrives to take Superman into custody. Superman freezes the peacemakers and flies away. We learned a little bit after the fact that the Peacemaker squad that was frozen and eventually released was led by Crenshaw. When the ice eventually thaws, Peacemaker Crenshaw, we find out, blacks out with rage for being made a fool of again by Superman. When he comes to his senses, he realizes his uncontrolled rage turned deadly when he opened fire on the surrounding citizens, killing a bunch of people. And that's the issue, so let's talk about impressions, art, positives, what have you. Let's make a bet. I'm going to put it out there, and I want to see if you kind of had the same feeling that I do. Let's make a bet. How long can a comic series called Absolute Superman go without actually telling you anything about Absolute Superman, as an adult at least, or focus on an entire issue on the titular character? Jason Aaron is playing, in my estimation, a dangerous game by wasting time telling you everything you need to know about the world and the characters around Superman, instead of actually telling and showing you Superman, which is exactly the same problem Jonathan Hickman is having over at Marvel on Ultimate Spider-Man. On the whole, this issue isn't bad if it was a transition issue or a cooldown issue. That would be fine. But you actually have to have at least one arc under your belt for a cooldown issue to make sense. And And right now, it's just all world building, all set up, and no Superman. So let's switch gears and talk about the art for a second. Rafa Sandoval's art looks fantastic. I mean, there's no complaints here. The moments of drama in what I would say is a dialogue-heavy issue come through loud and clear, and the little action that we do get looks, to be punny about it, looks super. There are no complaints about the art, so Sandoval earns top marks and he's doing everything he's supposed to do. So let's talk about the big positives and what's great about Absolute Superman number 4. If you have a burning desire to get to know the spirit and personality of Agent Lois Lane, who's a leading agent in the Lazarus Corporation, including the tense relationship she has with her father, this is the issue for you. Similar to the previous issues, Jason Aaron spends a healthy dose of time building out Superman's cast of supporting characters and the world they inhabit to give the Absolute Man of Steel a fully realized, fully fleshed out universe to inhabit. There's a lot of thought that goes into making these characters seem real and authentic and completely developed. If that's what you're into, this is a pretty solid issue for you. So let's talk about what's not great and why it doesn't seem to be working so much in Absolute Superman number 4. A fully fleshed out universe to inhabit is pointless if the main character is nowhere to be found. Jason Aaron has spent nearly 4 issues teasing a blank slate of a character where the big superheroics and wow moments are mostly performed by his technically advanced suit, not the Man of Steel. Either Jason Aaron is holding back Superman for some unknown reason that has yet to be revealed, and that's entirely possible, or Aaron thinks his world building is more interesting than it really is. Regardless, beautifully written moments don't replace the foundational aspects of standard storytelling that gets readers engaged. Now, I say stuff is missing, but let's give you some examples so we're just not saying it just to say it. For example, who is the point of view character? We don't know because the point of view character changes from one issue to the next, and it's not quite clear whose journey we're following. If you presume the Superman that we have here is the lead, which would make sense, what are his goals? What does he want? We don't know because we haven't spent any time with him, haven't talked with him, haven't gotten inside his head, haven't seen the world through his eyes. If you presume Absolute Superman stands for truth, justice, and the American way, which would be pretty standard for what's going on in the Earth Prime universe, what is standing in his way of getting to those goals? It's unknown. Sure, Lazarus Corp is doing evil, but they don't appear to be any match for Superman's overwhelming power because he's completely blown them away every time they've met. In short, Jason Aaron isn't telling a story, he's just wandering around in his own imagination without a thought or concern for where he's headed. And you, as the customer who's buying this comic, is footing the bill for Aaron's meandering. Final thoughts, what do we think about Absolute Superman number 4? It's a perfectly decent character building issue that gives readers a better picture of Agent Lois Lane. Jason Aaron puts considerable thought into fleshing out the Absolute Earth's rival groups, just to understand the differences between, say, the Omega Men and Lazarus Corp and what have you, and Agent Lane's relationship with her father, because, that's a key piece of information about her background. That said, readers expecting a comic titled Absolute Superman to have Absolute Superman show up for more than a couple of pages will be sorely disappointed. And unfortunately, this is not the first time we've had this critique after only 4 issues, and so you're going to be disappointed yet again. Therefore, Absolute Superman number 4 earns a 5.5 out of 10. Now, some folks may complain and say, well, that's way too low. I mean, this is a good issue. It's a good issue, but within the context of the series, we've got nothing so far about the main character. And if you're paying the cover price, which is $4.99 a piece, so far you paid $20 for barely any Superman in a Superman comic. That's ridiculous. And we have to stop lowering our expectations and do better. But what do you think? Am I just being too picky and too insistent about my expectations? And should I just let the story unfold, even if it takes a year and a half to get there? Leave a thumbs up if you found this review helpful, and drop a comment below with why you think this is the best Absolute title of the 3 Absolutes released so far. If this is your favorite, tell me why. I want to hear your explanation to convince me and change my mind. Also, remember to click on the link in the description to read the written review, check out the variant covers and preview pages, and buy this comic to help support the channel. Your support, of course, is greatly appreciated. And if you're watching this on YouTube, please click on that subscribe button down below. So thank you very much for joining, and stay tuned through the outro for more reviews just like this one.